second State of the Union for 1946. We defeat Nazis. I could go on. I think you get it. Yes, the war is now over in Noir City for this year. And the troops are coming home. And we have, with our allies, managed to save the world from fascism and Nazism, and for the rest of our lives, those of us who grew up in that generation following World War II, we will know the difference between democracy and fascism, and we will know that the Nazis are the greatest scourge in the history of mankind. We will know that forever, right? There's some very fine people in there. Anyway, what that war did, of course, is it liberated many people who did not want to live under the rule of tyranny. And it also, boy, is this going to be a transition. It also liberated a lot of artists who were hamstrung a bit. It started in the Depression. You had to make movies and do things to mollify the people and uplift their spirits. Same thing sort of happened in World War II. Then the war is over. And who knew that we would celebrate by really getting into this thing called film noir? That wouldn't be called film noir until years later by one of our World War II allies, the French. But all of a sudden, it's 1946, and there's this wonderful window of elation in the United States. And how did the people celebrate before the invention of television? They went to the movies. And 1946 was the biggest box office year in the history of the movies. And what grew out of that? You're right, first year of the baby boom. And what do you think was inspiring those people who went to the movies? I will tell you. John Garfield and Lana Turner and The Postman Always Rings Twice. Glenn Ford and Rita Hayworth and Gilda. Burt Lancaster and Ava Gardner and The Killers. And Alan Ladd and Veronica Lake in The Blue Dahlia. Trust me, the biggest money-making movie that year was Walt Disney's Song of the South. Nobody was going home and getting it on after watching Song of the South, right? Thank you, film noir. Somehow Eddie just managed to give film noir credit for creating the baby boom in this country. Okay, so this is the first time I've actually shown the Blue Dahlia in the Castro Theater. Not that I don't have any, I love the movie, it's all great, but it just never really fit with any programs before. So I'm happy that we're showing it tonight. The interesting, as I'm sure many of you know, because there are hardcore fans in this audience, this is the only original screenplay by Raymond Chandler, who is one of the most important fiction. I don't even say any longer he's one of the most important writers of crime fiction. I mean, he is one of the most important writers of the 20th century because it is his vision of Los Angeles that is now the vision believed around the world. Like, that's how people think of Los Angeles, even though he was just writing crime stories, really. And he has inspired more people to become writers than any other writer that I know. They all go simile crazy, and they all want to write. But seriously, he has inspired more successful crime writers than anybody else. The thing about this movie is the person who never gets enough credit for the creation of this film is its producer, John Houseman. Now, a lot of you younger people in the house may know John Houseman primarily as an actor. He had like a second act in his career where he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor. I'm not sure if he won it or not, for a picture he did called The Paper Chase. And then, of course, you know him because he became the voice of Smith Barney right? They make money the old-fashioned way. They earn it. That was John Houseman. But before all of that happened, he was a producer, a colleague of Orson Welles, and he came to Hollywood, and he was a really, really tremendous producer. He's responsible for bringing Nicholas Ray to Hollywood, and they lived by night together. But producers don't get credit really enough, because this was a troubled production. And what was going on here was that Alan Ladd needed to fulfill his military service before the end of the war, and he was under pressure to make another movie in Paramount before he was shipped out. And Houseman had the great idea. He had seen Double Indemnity, which Chandler co-wrote with Billy Wilder, co-wrote the screenplay with Billy Wilder, and he said, this guy, let's make a picture with Ladd and Lake, written by this guy, okay? But of course, the legendary story of what happened in the creation of this is that Chandler was struggling to write his first original screenplay. My theory about that is that up until that point, Raymond Chandler, all of his novels had been cannibalized from the original short stories he had written in the 1930s, right? He got plots by pulling together his short stories and making them somehow turn into a novel-length narrative. He didn't have that crutch all of a sudden when they said, write an original screenplay. So he was a bit terrified of this. So he made demands on the producers, like, I have to be drunk the whole time. Seriously, I mean, that was essentially his demand, right? And then when the pressure really came, because he was writing so slowly, that Houseman turned the production over because they needed to have it done quickly. He turned the production over to this old warhorse, George Marshall, who was quick. Let's just say he was quick. And he was shooting these pages so rapidly that they were catching up to Chandler, and they were actually through production, and he hadn't even written the third act of the screenplay yet. That's when he said, I get to work at home 24 hours a day, send cases of scotch, send a limousine to ferry page by page my script to the studio. This is exactly what transpired. He was nominated for an Oscar for Best Screenplay, okay? And there's a little tidbit of information about why it was so pressure-packed at the end, because the Navy saw the draft of the script and would not allow Chandler's original ending to stand. I'll tell you about that after the movie, because I don't want to give away any spoilers. But for those of you who have not seen Alan Ladd and Veronica Lake before in a picture, I guess you weren't here the other night. Or the other afternoon when we showed this gun for hire. What the hell's the matter with you? But they were an incredible screen team, as you will see in this movie. And yes, kids, that is Beaver Cleaver's dad that you will see in this movie, Hugh Beaumont, and William Bendix and Alan Ladd were actually best friends in real life, and they co-star in this movie together. So this is the first time in the Castro Theater for me presenting the Blue Dahlia. Enjoy, and we'll see you back here.